Rayman is a franchise that I've never had the opportunity to play, and I've been in the mood for a platformer that's easy to pick up. Insert Rayman Legends. I was recommended Rayman Legends from some people that tell me it's highly underrated and is a blast to play. Considering Ubisoft made this title, and let's be honest, it's hard to trust anything made by Ubisoft nowadays, I still took the chance and gave this game a try. And I'm definitely glad I did. As far as the story, we'll run through this fast because there really isn't much to talk about. This game has an extremely simple story since the gameplay is the main attraction. Taking place 100 years after Rayman Origins, Rayman and Murphy work together to defeat the magician who captured Barbara and the other princesses. The magician divides himself into 5 and each magician serves as the boss for each world. That's pretty much it for the story. As you progress through each world, you'll see cutscenes where you see the magician of said world wreaking havoc along with you blasting them into space upon defeat. By the end of the story, there's a small level of satisfaction from defeating all the magicians, but I'd be lying if I said I cared a lot about it. This game's story is one that isn't meant to be difficult to understand, but a plot that can be figured out with the least amount of effort possible. Since I didn't play the other Rayman games, I can't speak on the story in those, but for this game, I thought the story was just right. It gave you enough so that you can follow along, but it's so bare bones that it never distracts you from the gameplay. This story keeps your attention just enough for you to put a little effort into caring about it, which for a platformer like Rayman, I thought was a good thing. If the story was the appetizer, the gameplay serves as the main course and the dessert. If you played any form of side-scrolling platformers before, then you know what to expect. Even still, Rayman Legends takes what's present in most platformers and expands upon it, giving the game a fresh and unique touch. In my opinion, the best aspect of this game was the level design. In each world, you go up, down, and in all directions, but there's so much more to it. It's how you move throughout each level which makes all the difference. Normally, you move forward in order to actually get through the level, but many times you perform other actions like swimming through crevices, sliding down platforms, and using air to float to each destination. The variation in movement helped make each level feel different from the rest. Knowing that in some levels you would swim and in others you could fly, it may entice you to replay those over the other levels where you would just run or walk from place to place. Speaking of running, it took me a lot longer to figure out how to run than I thought it would. In order to run, you just move the left analog stick and hold R2, but the game doesn't tell you that until after the tutorial. As you complete more and more levels, the game introduces new mechanics that you have to learn and use on the fly. These aren't hard to figure out, but it makes you adjust and adapt to how those new moves are used throughout that specific level. Going along with the level design, the environments are unique and constantly change as you move from level to level. They're always visually appealing and give you plenty of things to look at while progressing. Depending on your skill level, you may die a lot, so while constantly reloading the screen, at least the background looks nice. The changing design of each area crafts a unique atmosphere for each level that allows it to stand on its own. What makes the levels even better is that there's always something moving around or inside each level. Whether it be buildings, enemies, or destructible objects, you have to keep your eyes on the entire screen. Focusing on just your character will have you dying over and over because you need to constantly be looking ahead so you know what's coming. As far as the actual combat itself, there isn't much to it. When you approach enemies, you press square to attack and inflict damage. Depending on the enemy, sometimes you would need to press square consecutive times since that particular enemy can take multiple hits. If you hold the attack button, you can do a charge attack that allows you to reach enemies or objects from a longer distance. I thought this was really useful when trying to save teensies that were a bit out of reach. One thing I was impressed with was the enemy variety throughout the game. In each level, there are tons of different creatures and monsters that you have to fight in order to progress. What makes them so cool is that they don't have the same moveset, as some shoot at you while others use physical attacks. As I mentioned earlier, there are different methods of traversal that we use depending on the level. This same concept applies to the enemies too. Instead of always being placed in fixed locations where they just stand and wait, sometimes they'll float down from above or fly from another location, presenting a different challenge. The boss fights were a nice surprise and were harder than I thought they'd be. They're not what you think they are either, as it's not just running up and hitting an enemy over and over again until their HP goes to 0. Many times you have to perform a specific movement while the enemy tries to attack you and dodge a whole bunch of other stuff at the same time. That combined with the different music and environments make the entire boss fight feel separate than any of the other levels leading up to it. The concept of defeating the boss isn't explained either, which makes the challenge of defeating the boss even more fun. You have to figure out what the boss is actually doing and then what you need to do in order to apply damage. Take it a step further and you may have to find a time when to actually do it. All of this thought and effort that goes into these fights make it feel worthwhile since you have to go through so many levels just to get to it. Now let's switch gears a bit. There really wasn't anything that I disliked about this game, but something happened to me by the end. Fatigue. As I mentioned before, the whole concept is to find the teensies in each level, but it's a side-scrolling platformer, so you're pretty much going from left to right every level. Even with everything that I mentioned before about the gameplay, this does get old fast. Not because the gameplay itself is boring, it's due to the sheer amount of levels that are in the game. There are 5 worlds, and within each world there's a bunch of levels that you have to get through in order to reach the boss. But what makes this so tedious is the fact they get harder as you go to the next world, which is to be expected. But because of this, you may not collect as many teensies you need in order to progress. So your options are to replay the levels you already finished to collect those missing teensies, or play the Rayman Origins levels that you can unlock using lucky tickets that you could receive. These Rayman Origins levels offer additional teensies that you can collect even if you don't feel like going through the levels you already completed. Even still, you have to play through those entire sections just to get the missing teensies before going back to the main worlds you originally wanted to play through. You could chalk this up as a skill issue by saying, oh, you just suck at the game and you should have got all the teensies as you went through each world. But once you play this for yourself, you'll see that some of them are in really hard to reach places or in hidden areas that you're unlikely to find. This fatigue didn't hinder my overall experience, but it made me want to finish the game and not enjoy the levels for what they were as I got closer to the end. To sum it up simply, this game had too many levels. I've played a lot of games in my life, and it's rare that a title has too much content, but this is one of those cases. In my opinion, the core gameplay doesn't change enough to warrant all the levels, but if you're a person who loves platformers, then this is perfect for you. Moving on. There's a lot to unlock for grabbing things within each level. The main section is called Main Gallery and consists of the main worlds to the right and all of the unlockables to the left. As you progress, you can unlock heroes, which are just different characters that you can play with. Once unlocked, you have to jump into the painting to switch characters, and then you can use them in any level. I would advise you to use different characters because they have different animations and styles that help spice up the gameplay, even if the core mechanics remain the same. There's additional challenges that you can play as well that offer you rewards and allow you to compete against your friends to see who can get the best score or time. If you want a nice change up from the main worlds, these may be right up your alley. There's a painting called Kung Foot where you can essentially play soccer against your friends, which I didn't have any to play this game with, but I could imagine that when this game first dropped, this game mode was really fun. Multiple characters on the screen at one time kicking the ball back and forth sounds basic, but the way it feels may surprise you. So if you have anybody to try this mode with, I would recommend it. And then the final painting are the creatures, where you can collect rewards from the different types of creatures you unlock thanks to the scratch-offs. As you progress, you unlock these scratch-offs that you use the touchpad to scratch and reveal a lottery-type card, which will then reveal a reward. Sometimes these are creatures, and other times they're levels from Rayman Origins. Regardless of what you get, they're both useful and will help you in your journey. The gameplay for Rayman Legends is very fun and addicting, but with the amount of levels included, if you don't love platformers, then you might get burnt out. If you live for these type of games, then there's more than enough content for you and you're sure to get your money's worth. Overall, Rayman Legends is a fun platformer that's a great game to play if you're looking for a change of pace. The story is basic but does enough to keep you somewhat interested, and the gameplay is fun and challenging, forcing you to pay attention at all times. Even with the overabundance of levels, you're sure to have a great time. For those reasons, I'm going to give this game a 9. This game is a blast to play, and if I love side-scrolling platformers, I could have gave this a 10. But once you understand how the game works, the gameplay loop eventually gets old after going through so many levels. What did you think of Rayman Legends? Have you played a Rayman game before, or is this your first time hearing about it? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like or subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.